always busy but not getting anywhere? What if the reason you're not winning is because you're doing too much? I spent years jumping from one business idea to the next, thinking I was making progress, but in reality, I was just running circles. In this video, I'm going to share the painful lessons that I've learned and provide you with 6 tips to help you avoid these failures. Hey, I'm JB, and on this channel, I share real stories and lessons on business, finance, and entrepreneurship to help you build, grow, and win. Let's dive in. So this quote hit me really hard the other day. It's a quote by Voss, and it says, if you don't know where you're going, distractions will look like opportunity. If there's anything that I've done really well in my career is getting distracted. I've started more businesses than I can count, and it's not that many of them really failed, it's just that none of them were the only business that was my only business. You know what I mean by that? I had my core business, I had my big revenue generating business, and I'm always spawning off new startup ideas because I'm this entrepreneur. And what that turns me into is a serial entrepreneur, which I say that in a way that it's really not a great thing to be serial entrepreneurs. Some people are really good at being serial entrepreneurs. They get a business, they automate it, or they start a business, then they automate it and they make it profitable, and then they delegate all their tasks and they do something else. But most entrepreneurs, when they own a lot of businesses, they're probably just really distracted. They're really spread thin. It may energize them. It energizes me. I love to start businesses. And I realized that I go on this excitement cycle from idea to starting the business and then feeling excited and then slowly becoming overwhelmed and burnt out. And then that business ends up failing because I didn't have the bandwidth to really operate it or the capital to invest in other people to operate it. And then that turns into me going back to my normal business, and then I start a new idea. Luckily, as of today, I have to say that when I saw this quote, if you don't know where you're going, distractions will look like opportunities. And I realized that that's not me anymore, but that was my past self. I didn't know where I was going, and I was constantly looking for something else, or as some people have told me in the past, or really one person has told me in the past, that I'm constantly trying to hedge my bet. And what they meant by that was that I was always trying to diversify. I'm always trying to create multiple revenue streams, so that way if one fails, then the others don't, then I don't fail individually. And while that's not a terrible strategy, that means that you can't give 110% to one thing. To be successful in business, you need to give 110% to one business. Now, if you have 3 businesses, the math just doesn't math that very well. So my goal is to give you 6 tips on how I have really gotten out of this rut of being distracted, essentially saying yes to every opportunity or trying to build every single opportunity. Tip number 1 is use frameworks. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we consider ourselves to be maybe hyper intelligent, or we just know exactly what we need to do to get from A to B. Many times we are good at getting from A to B, and because of that, we think that we're the same person to get ourselves from B to C. The reality is we had never been in that territory, and most businesses, especially ones that are over $1 million in revenue, that is where a lot of failure happens. So we don't know exactly what to do. We thought our business was this, and now it's changing. Now we maybe have multiple layers of leadership in place, and now we have to manage managers. Whatever the case may be, we may know the things that we want to do, and we may just try to create it or create the processes. So what I mean by frameworks is there are courses out there, there are books out there. Try to, if you want to do something, then find the top 3 books that already know how to do that, or the top authors that are the thought leaders in that, and buy their course or subscribe to their YouTube channel, and then just follow that step by step. What happens in my life, what happened is when I follow frameworks, then I have a recipe. And when I follow that recipe, I'm going to have success. But if I say, hey, I want to create an email nurturing campaign, and I'm just trying to figure it out, well, why should I try to reinvent the wheel? Somebody has already published an amazing book on email nurturing, most likely, or how to create a marketing funnel. Second, along those lines of the sometimes you need a boss, is join a mastermind or hire a coach. Many times as entrepreneurs, we are lonely. We're lonely at the top. We may have a business partner, but in most cases, it is a single-owned business, and then we have maybe the managers or employees underneath us. And there's a lot of times that we can't speak our mind. We need other entrepreneurs to speak to and bounce ideas off of. So by joining a community, and that may be in the form of a mastermind or even just hiring a coach, you could have somebody that, one, is giving you frameworks. They're hearing your challenges and then trying to provide solutions or recipes that you can follow. But also in the case of community, you can just chat and brainstorm and have free discussions. Many masterminds have a Facebook group or a Slack channel. And every single time you have a challenge in your business, you can ask people how they've faced that challenge. The third tip is to create a growth team. So this is actually an idea that I took from a book called Scale at Speed by a gentleman named Felix, who's super brilliant. He's in the marketing agency industry. And he talks about how to empower your team to really grow your business. Now, I'm on the second round of doing this, and it has been just game changing. What I've noticed is, and actually, let me take a step back and define a growth team. So essentially, a growth team is you identify people on your team. But in my case, typically it's about 4 or 5 people that manage different roles, and you create your master goal, your 5-year goal, and then break that down into annual goals, and then break those annual goals, or at least the first year's worth of goal, into what you need to accomplish every quarter, what you need to accomplish in every month, and every 2 weeks. This can also be considered an agile framework where they actually work in sprints. So you take this agile framework and you assign different tasks, like essentially put a Kanban board together and take those little tasks and assign them to somebody who is the best at possibly doing that. What happens is your employees that are probably tired of just doing the minutia and the reoccurring work that you have every single month, they actually become more energized. And the ones that don't become energized, then don't force this on. Some people don't want those challenges. Some people want routine. But the people, your A players, want challenges. And so now you're actually going to have more employee retention. And then also now your employees have a sense of ownership. Like, hey, I helped build this. Instead of, hey, I helped just take the tasks that client work and just did that. Now, that can be rewarding for some people, but your A players are not going to want that. And then also it provides a sense of accountability for you. If JB, myself, I can get distracted really, really easily. And this helps me come up with a focus. And then I put 4 or 5 people in front of me that I have to meet with a couple times a week. And so if I get distracted, then I feel like I'm letting them down because my focus and my goal was to be here. And so every single week, I'm reminded that, no, this is my sole focus. I can't focus on 3 or 4 different things, or that's not the definition of focus. My 4th tip is to focus on one business until you can remove yourself from it. So like I was talking about before, I've started so many different businesses, and I've really done that before I've removed myself from a business that I've started. So I would recommend for any single business startup, just continue focusing on that until it generates revenue, until it's profitable, and until you can automate the tasks. This also may mean, and this is probably a whole nother video, but this also may mean that when you start a business, only have one product or service. Again, using marketing agency as an example, many marketing agencies launch and they have SEO and paid search and websites and Facebook advertising and Google display advertising and all these different things that they offer. Well, what that means is going to take you forever, and you probably just won't do it, is you're never going to be able to automate your systems or properly delegate it or build process docs out to make sure that you provide consistent, high quality results for your clients every single time. Now, if you just start with something like SEO and you perfect your technical optimization, your on-site content, and your backlinking strategies, and you say, hey, that's my service, you could probably accomplish that in a few months and then really perfect that, test it out for a few more months, tweak it along the way, because your first process will never be the last process. Then consider upselling something like paid search to your clients after you've sort of created that system and unique value add that your agency is going to provide. My 5th one is to niche your business. So many businesses say, I work with everybody. I'll work with the small business all the way to the large business. No, you're wrong. You should not take on a Fortune 500 business if you're also working with your local HVAC shop. And even then, debatably, should you work with the local HVAC shop and also work with a dentist? What if you just picked one of those and everything that you do is super focused on that industry? Both of those industries I just mentioned have well over 100,000 clients. If you are taking on every single client, well, you have to learn all these different industries, because not just going to be those two. It's going to be 20 to 30 of those that you're going to constantly take in. Figure out where your service is most valuable, essentially that your solution solves the biggest problem the quickest, and just focus on that one until you feel like you've just really saturated the market. If you've really saturated the market, then you don't really have any other problems, and you probably don't even need to diversify. You're on a whole nother level now. But maybe at that level is when you bring in that next industry. The sixth and final tip here is to backlog your ideas. So you have lots of ideas, and many times we feel like we don't want them to go to waste. And because we don't want them to go to waste, we just do them and we just build them. But instead, what if you had Apple Notes or a Trello board or something where every single time you have a business idea, you just jot it down. Then whenever you're bored and you need something new to work on, you go back to that board or notepad and try to execute one of those ideas. So those are my 6 tips on essentially how to avoid letting new opportunities distract you, and just focus on what you do best and super hyper focus on what you want. If you like business content like this, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and I'll see you at the next video.